Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. We like it when someone gets what is coming to them. This week we are looking at humor in the Bible and considering Bible stories that have a humorous element to them. However, let me remind you that Bible humor is not a jokey kind of humor, but rather focused on irony, situational humor, and things like trickery. Today we have one of those stories where someone gets what they have coming, and those people in the Bible times would have appreciated it all because the person who got it was their enemy. Again, like yesterday, the story is long and complex, but let's look together at the story of Esther. The story happens when the Israelites were in exile in Babylon, and someone most of us don't often think of was the Babylonian queen Vashti. The king threw something like a 6-month party, and so Queen Vashti threw a smaller one for the women. At one point, the king decided to have Queen Vashti parade around for his guests so they could marvel at her beauty. In a powerful blow for women's liberation, Vashti refused to be put on display like an object. And her reward for her resistance is that she was deposed, and the king sought another queen. He ended up marrying Esther, who was a Jew, but the king didn't know it. Her first small bit of humor: even in secret, the Jewish woman was exalted. One of the king's advisors was named Mordecai, and he happened to be Esther's cousin. The king had another advisor named Haman who hated the Jews and sought to destroy them. He was Mordecai's bitter enemy. Early in the story, Mordecai uncovered a plot to assassinate the king and revealed it. After quite some time, one night, the king couldn't sleep, and so he had his servants read the court record to him. There's nothing like reading the goings-on at the king's throne room in order to put you to sleep. As the king was reminded how Mordecai had saved him, Haman happened to walk in. The king said, "What shall be done for the man I wish to honor? How can I reward him?" Well, Haman thought to himself, "Who would the king like to honor more than me?" So he spoke of an elaborate parade with the man to be honored by the king as the grand marshal, the focus of the whole thing. The king said, "That's a great idea. Now go out and plan all this to honor Mordecai." Remember, they were enemies, and still Haman had to pull himself together and honor Mordecai to fulfill the wishes of the king. The people would have laughed and laughed at that turn of events. The one who thought he was to be honored had instead to honor his bitter enemy, one of their own. Well, the story isn't over. Haman hatched an elaborate plot to have all of the Jews killed, but again Mordecai caught wind of it, and he told Queen Esther. Haman presented his plan to the king, who agreed to it, and outside the palace a huge gallows was built and put under construction. Meanwhile, Queen Esther invited the king and Haman to dinner. There are details of the story here that really aren't that important, but in the end, Esther reveals that she is a Jew, and that Haman's plot involved not just her people, but also her. Well, once again, the king pulled a switch and ordered that Haman be hung on the very gallows he had built for the Jews. What a story filled with twists and irony. The Israelites would have laughed at how their enemy got the very thing he had planned for them. They would have been tickled at the twists God used to save them. It was and is a story that amused them. Interestingly, this event is still remembered and celebrated with a Jewish holiday today. These events lead to the celebration of Purim. While we aren't too familiar with Purim, for Jews, the day before Purim is a day of fasting to remember Esther's fast before she went to see the king. On Purim Day, Jews celebrate with feasting, giving thanks to God, and sending gifts to friends and money to the poor. They would have enjoyed the irony and twists of this story and how Haman got what he intended for them and how God saved them. As Christians, we know that Jesus got what we deserved, and we celebrate the marvelous twists of God's grace for us. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.